Welcome back to Creative Questions. And this week we have on Kristine Arth. Kristine Arth is the founder and principal designer behind Lobster Phone. She is known for building brands that carefully balance timelessness with distinct visual expression. And on today's episode, we talk about what branding means to us, her travels around the world, and what it means to truly love what you do. Without further ado, here is Kristine Arth. Before you hop in, I wanted to note my audio is a little trash. I really loved this episode. I loved what we talked about, so I really wanted to do my best not to reshoot it. So we basically had to do some audio doctoring to get it to the state that it's in now. I think it's listenable. I think it's watchable. It's just not up to the quality that I normally have. So I thank you for dealing with that, and I hope you do enjoy this episode.
All right. So my first question, is it Chris? Do you go by Chris or do you go by Kristine?
I go by both. It really depends on how I've been met or introduced.
Okay. All right. I just want to make sure that I'm doing it right.
Because I'm going to call you Cam now.
Okay, perfect. There we go. How are you doing today? I just wanted to, we kicked off with a bunch of technical difficulties, which is always my favorite way to kick off a podcast
Totally.
episode.
And it wasn't my fault. I was not. You were the professional, and I was like, oh my God, Dios mío, I hope that this is okay for me.
Oh my gosh. I don't know. Oh, the funny thing is like I had, Meg Lewis was the last person I recorded with. Mm-hmm. And in that episode, I have a power strip under my desk that goes in and out. I kicked that power strip 3 times and shut down everything. Like,
oh no. Yeah.
After 3 times. I won't. It's pushed back all the way to the back. So we should be fine. I hated that. I was like, I hate to be this person. So I fixed it for this one. I was like, we're going to get this out the way. But yeah, it drives me nuts. But how was your day been? What have you been up to today?
It's good. I actually just biked back to the apartment that I'm renting right now from Spanish class. I'm taking Spanish every morning right now in Mexico City.
Every morning?
Every morning for the next 6 weeks.
That's really fun.
Yeah, it is. I'm exhausted. It's day 4 and I was like, oh my God, I forgot how intense it is to learn every day.
Yes, it's an intense. I'm saying people are always like, you should learn other languages when you're young. Yeah. And I'm like, I believe that.
I believe that. I blame my parents, and I called them, and I'm like, I blame you for this inability that I'm trying to overcome.
Yeah, it's all your fault.
It's all your fault.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, I'm so glad to have you. I was so excited that Johnny connected us both.
Same.
It was just one of those things where I'm like, this is a person I've been following for so long. I've been following your work for so long.
I'm flattered and honored to be here. So
yeah, and so I'm excited to get to talk to you. I feel like this podcasting journey has been really cool because it's been an opportunity for me to connect with the people who gave me my start in design and creatives in that side of the world. So it's always exciting to have people like you on. So we'll hop into more of who you are and what you're about and some random questions, and we'll have really a good time. So you're in Mexico City. So we're going to start with a question about traveling.
Yeah.
So what has been your favorite place that you have traveled to?
Oh, I'm going to say Mexico City, of course, because I'm here right now. I think that it's just my, it's what I feel. It's whatever I'm doing in that moment of that moment is what is the best thing, because I can't dwell on the past.
Dang, I like that.
Yeah.
I like that a lot.
Yeah.
Because where were you in Spain? Where was the last place you were for a while?
I was in Buenos Aires for the last year. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
But I normally am in San Francisco, so that's where my home base is, and that's where my apartment is. And You know, that's where my couch is that I really like. So in my record section, I'm like, so I would say wherever my records are, that's where my home is.
Nice. So is this just how you live life? Is it just like more of a fun thing to travel? Or do you just not want to be stuck in one place? Like what, like?
You know, I don't really know. As I've recently realized, I'm embarking the path of the pathless, where I'm trying not to make too many plans for the future because I've realized that they don't come true and I can't control them. So, you know, note to younger self in one of your questions. Note to younger self, you can't control anything, so don't even try.
Dang.
Yeah, we're gonna get deep here, Cam.
No, let's do it. I'm inspired.
Deep. I was like, I'm ready for it. I was like, I'm in a spiritual place here. Mexico City is built on a lake that doesn't exist. I was like, there's a lot of transformation going on.
Nice. Yeah. I've always been like, that's one reason that I've been drawn, like kind of called to freelancing. It's just like more of that freedom, like that ability to like not be tied down to a desk. I was like, in my last career, I was an engineer, like a mechanical engineer. So I worked for a Fortune 500 company, and it was just like being tied to a desk every day doing the same stuff. It was rough.
I mean, I'm tied to a computer.
I mean, what's your take that computer anywhere? If you wanted to go work over here, you could. Like,
I mean, I used to think it was cool that I'm like, I've worked on the back of a bus, I've worked on the back of a truck, I've worked on a plane, I've worked on a motorcycle, and then I'm like, wait, that's insane. I was like, I just don't want to work. So let's do that.
That's a whole different game.
It is.
And yeah, we can get into the whole like capitalism talk, but that's just like
that's next level.
Tough.
That's next podcast.
Yeah. That's the next podcast. That's a tough place.
Yeah.
But yeah, I really enjoy like your spirit, because it really seems like whenever you get a chance to go to these places, you really dive into the culture. You dive into the creative stuff that's going on in these places. Like I used to watch when you were in Buenos Aires, post a lot of their design around the city, and I was like, dang, that stuff is so cool to be able to like walk up to a normal pizza shop and like look at the what they've chosen as design for like their restaurant. So how do you feel about that? Yeah.
I think travel in general is inspiring to me. I mean, I'm fortunate that I can do it. And, you know, in some ways I would say I built my life to be able to do that. So, you know, it's not like I just arrived here. It took a lot of work and, you know, a lot of time and effort to, you know, make a business for myself where I can go places that inspire me and seek inspiration from the culture around me.
Yeah, that's it. I'm just so excited to be talking to you. Is there a moment out of all of your travels, like design wise, that you're like, were like super blown away by something that you saw?
Oh, I mean, I think Barcelona, just like all of the Gaudi and Dali influence of, you know, just morphic sculptural things that should be straight edges and they just aren't. And it's almost perplexing in that way where I'm still curious about it and how things are built in that way. So I guess from being a mechanical engineer and having structure in your background, I don't have that structure. So I'm like, how did they do this?
Yeah.
To me, that's super inspirational. And, you know, I think surrealism in general, and there's a lot of surreality in Barcelona. I really enjoyed that. It may be one of the contenders of my favorite cities in the world, but probably because of the influence of surreality, organicness.
Yeah.
Just beautiful.
I love that. I think you said the word surreal, like, and I feel like that describes your work. Like there is a piece of like of that in the way that you work, and I've never been able to.
It's kind of surreal now. That's why I named my company Lobster Phone.
Yeah, which
I was like,
it
was really crazy.
Yeah.
It's like someone comes to me with an idea, and then I'm like, hold on, I have an idea visually for that.
I've never thought about it like that because that
Yeah,
is a wild ride.
I
So
mean, what we do is strange that someone comes to us with something that is intangible and almost indescribable half the time because they can't quite describe it. Otherwise, they would do it themselves. And then we come back to them with something that's visual and verbal and with a form and a meaning out of nowhere, just from our brain, you know? And yeah,
that,
it is kind of surreal. Thanks, brain.
yeah, that's beautiful. I'm full-heartedly, it's an art, and it's a blessing to get to do it, like, as often as I get to do it. I think a lot of people take it too serious. They're like, this is a very mechanical thing. And I'm like, it is not. Like, come on, man. We're putting like random images on the computer and then might get printed on some paper. It is not like, yes, there needs to be like maybe some thought process into the people who will see it. But come on, let's have some fun.
It's really funny that you say that some people take it so seriously. I take it so seriously.
Well, let's just say we can have both.
And like, I'm trying to break that down. I take it so seriously that yet it's like this inner conflict for me where I'm really, obviously you can tell I'm very expressive and passionate, but
for sure,
also like a little bit quirky. But I do take it extremely seriously. It is like, it's not about winning awards. It's not about, having my own agenda to make something that I think is cool or of the moment. It's really like working with a client to understand what their needs are and also like who they are as a person so that I can have a brand that they're happy with in a way that it's not about being happy, but someplace that they're wanting to go back to every single day because they're inspired, And that's not always an award-winning brand. That's not always an award or something that makes people happy at the end of the day. It's like, it's what makes them go back to work. And it's the whole idea around it, I had an old colleague that would say, brand with the capital B. I'm like, yeah, it's brand with the capital B, it's not just like a logo.
100%. And that's something that every little designer, baby designer has to figure out eventually. But it's a journey. It's a journey along that path.
Stuff all day long. Like I could make Bauhaus looking things all day, but it's not necessarily going to be memorable because it's not something that people will either dislike or they'll be confused by, or maybe even thought provoke, to provoke thoughts. Sorry, my English has gotten really bad since I've started to learn Spanish.
That's so funny.
I can't speak anything right now. Not even Spanish, not English. I'm like, where am I?
That's dope. I was listening to, I think it was a podcast with Smith and Diction. I don't know if you know who they are, but they're an agency I've been following for a little while. But they were talking about building worlds and like truly the stuff that we do in brand is world building. And like you said, having the owner of it then want to go live in that world every day, I think is a great way to also put a cherry on top of that, like that idea.
I mean, of course, I think being happy is subjective.
Yes.
And when someone's like, well, I just want to really like it and be happy with it, that's subjective to them. It's not subjective to the business. Like strategically speaking, like it needs to deliver on the strategy, not on somebody's happiness, because that comes and goes, but the strategy is a foundation and that's what lasts forever. I mean, until they change it.
Until they change it.
Until they pivot and like bankrupt themselves. Yeah.
That's the other thing that is not talked about often is like how you go and invest all this time sometimes. And people are like, yeah, we're actually closing the doors tomorrow.
Oh, totally. Yeah. Or like, you do a brand completely and they have it out there and they're like, you know what? We're going to change our name.
Yes.
That's happening to me right now. And I'm like, you know what? I think that you should. Let's redo it. Why not?
I've been...
I love to do this work. Let's do it again.
I've been in... because I've done sprint model before where you're in like workshopping.
Mhm.
we've gotten to the point of like the day of the workshop, and we're
Oh.
like kicking off the workshop, and they're like, "Should we change the name?" And we're like, "No,
No.
this is not the time for that." Like,
Yeah, you're like, "Well, I don't know. How much money do you have in your pocket?"
we can name workshop today and come back
That's what I
tomorrow.
always say. I'm like, "Hey, man, this is my living. Like, I love to
Yeah,
design. You wanna
for
change it?
sure,
Great. I have no dog in that fight." I was like, "Let's change it all." I'm like, "It's gonna be more money, but, that's up to you."
for sure. Um, So I want to hop into the next question. I feel like we've talked a lot about like where you are currently, but I would like to kind of talk about where you've come from. So I
Oh,
think this question will answer that. So if we asked your parents, what would they say you were going to be when you grew up as a kid?
uh-huh. I mean, there's the PC answer. And then there's the non-PC answer. I'm
Can we
gonna
do
go
both and? Can we do both and? Because
we can do both. Okay, like the first answer, the PC answer would be like she's gonna be an actor because she's so
okay,
dramatic and like charismatic, and I
I
just want
love that.
to, like do all the things. Um, the non-PC answer would have been like probably a stripper because I loved to dance around the house naked when I was a little kid. So
That's so
I'm
funny.
like, well, design is close.
It's cracking up.
Totally.
That's awesome. Did you ever do any acting? Did you do plays? Did you do
No,
theater? Okay.
admittedly, I walked into drama club in high school. I think I was a freshman, and I had prepared like this Shakespearean sonnet that I thought was really good, and I prepared it in a Cockney accent because that's what I thought Shakespeare was. And I went in there and performed it, and they were just like, "Okay." And that was the only time I ever did any
He's like,
acting.
never again. Never again.
I'm like, "Nah, I'm
Yeah.
good. I think I'll go into the ceramics room."
Yeah. I'll go make a vase by myself. Like, I think that's
Totally, I
where I
did
deserve to
too. I
be.
was like, I made a sculpture of my own hand. To be or not to be.
Yeah.
I was a very
That's
dramatic
awesome.
kid.
No, I love that. I always talk because my son is like, I'm dramatic, so dramatic. And now my son is like super dramatic. My wife is like, he gets that from you. And I'm like, hey, let it be. Like, let's be dramatic. Let's be
Yeah,
expressive. Like, it's
right,
fun.
let's express. It's fun. Expression is fun.
Yes, it's important. So I love that. I don't think your parents are like, yeah, it'll be one of these two. And
One
then
or the other. I think they were worried, and then they were also worried when I decided to go to school for fine arts. They were like, "She'll figure it out."
what did you end up? So tell us more about like that story. Like, so you went to college for fine arts, and
Yeah,
how
I
did
got
you end up in branding?
I started off in ceramics and sculpture, and
Okay.
I thought it's funny now because you always go back to the things that you start off at. I'm like looking into it again.
Yeah.
Um, I started off in ceramics and sculpture, and then one day I was walking past the computer lab, and like everything was just like so wild and cool on the screens, and I was like, "That's a lot faster than watching glazes dry. I'm going in there." And I switched my major like within the week. I was just like, I'm going to be in graphic design now. I don't really know what that is. I didn't even know that that was a profession before. My family, not my immediate family, but like my grandma and my aunt were artists. And so it was familiar to me to understand fine art,
Yeah.
ceramicist, printmaking, but graphic design was something totally unique and I'd never heard of it. And my parents are entrepreneurs. They were landscapers for a long time, had their own business. So it wasn't like I grew up around it and no one I knew did design like that. So it was kind of taking a chance and a risk for me to just like go into something that I'd never heard of. I had no idea existed and like computers were all new.
Yeah. Forget about that point. Like this, the stuff we're doing on like it's been so
Not
bad.
21,
Like,
Cameron. I've been around for a while.
fair. I remember us getting our first like Mac computer when I was like 8. And I was like, dang, this is so cool. But it's crazy to think of that and then think of where we are now. But
Oh, I
sometimes
know.
I forget about like whole professions were completely different
Completely.
now than they were before. Like,
I used to art direct with cameras with film. And I was an art director on Burger King and Applebee's and Coca-Cola for a long time when I worked in an agency back when I
wow.
started out in advertising. And we would shoot with the photographer and we would have the food stylist there and we would have like, the sandwich or burger on set and all the lights would be projected on it. And there'd be a ton of toothpicks in it, holding everything up, spraying some water, editing everything. And then he'd take the photo. We would wait for it to come out. And then we would mark up what's wrong with it on the photograph. And then those stylists would take the photo over, look at the thing, and then like change it. I mean, the time that it took just to get one photo was insanity compared to literally within the same year we switched to digital and like everything went digital camera. And it was like,
Dang.
hey, it was like, we just got 50 shots of that burger.
And then the company or the agency's like, now I want 50 shots. Like
Totally.
every day.
Exactly. Expectations change. Yeah.
Yeah.
Truthfully.
Yeah. I was talking to someone who was also in, I think it was ad, and they were talking about runners who would like basically bring you what work you're going to be doing that day. That would be their whole job. It's like running from the planners to, and the runners would run it to like the designers. And
I
then
didn't have that.
I think it was further back, but these
Yeah,
runners
that
were the
must have
people
been
who were
before me. That was when they were
basically,
like scribbling out, like inking out type on setting it in paper. Yeah.
yes, like,
Directed
and,
that.
and basically those people were like now are like Trello or Monday.com. And it's like like it's crazy to think that those jobs are like now gone and replaced with like software. But
Yeah.
that happens. Like that's the thing.
I mean, I'm sure that was a miserable job though, to run back and forth to people. Like that sounds awful.
It does. Like,
Yeah. I'm hoping that AI replaces the bad jobs in the world, not the fun ones.
eggs. So being a person who comes from like a science background, I
Mhm.
believe that that's the only way it's gonna work. If
Yeah.
we start replacing the stuff that's actually fun, I
Yeah. What
don't
do we
think
do?
people, yeah, I don't think people are gonna make it.
Yeah, we lose our humanity.
Yeah,
What
I
a
mean,
bummer.
that is the proper way to say it. What a bummer.
What
Like
a,
I hate the idea
what a
that
bummer.
like the stuff that me and you are doing can be just taken away by a computer and some algorithms. It's not.
I don't
It's
really
not.
worry about it. I don't worry about it at all, actually. I just feel like creativity is such an innate and intangible substance,
Yeah.
It's like, and I guess the thing somebody said to me before, maybe it was a professor, like, yes, it's been done before, but it's never been done by you.
Oh,
And
I love that.
the interesting thing is like all of these things that we're all doing have been done before so many times. I mean, like
Yeah.
history is just loaded with the same things over and over and over again. Nothing's original. It's original because it's coming from that specific person,
Oh, I love
in that
that.
specific time for that context from their culture and their experiences. And that's what makes it unique. Like you and I could get the exact same brief, exact same project, same client, and we would come up with something totally different, but it's because of our lives.
Yes, it's our experiences, and those
Yeah.
experiences create perspective, and that perspective is what we paint with. And
Totally. Well, that's
I,
why people choose me or why they choose you.
yeah,
When I work with clients, because Lobster Phone, it's just me. I'm a solopreneur.
that's
All the work
crazy.
is me up there. So when they choose to work with me, they're choosing to work with me directly.
Yeah,
And that's another reason why I don't have employees or I don't have a salesperson for business development, because how is someone else supposed to go sell the way that I speak about the brand?
for
They
sure.
could get me clients, of course, but they're not going to get me the kind of clients that I really have a connection with and that I can make a difference with because they want to work with me one-on-one. And that to me is special. That to me is worth waiting for the right client or saying no to the wrong clients.
Hey, I love you're
Are we
speaking
gonna
a very
cry?
yeah, like, oh,
I was like, I've been
what
crying
is
every day for months, so let's just do it.
is it the Spanish? It's the Spanish.
No,
It's one in
yeah,
Spanish.
it's
So.
Spanish tears. They're Spanish tears. I'm gonna buy
um,
them and like, send them to my family.
that's just so well spoken. Like that's so well said. I think a lot about again, we get back into like capitalism and there's just this idea of this need to grow bigger and this need to dominate and this need
Yeah,
to take over and have bigger teams and have more people. And it's
totally.
like at some point you just water everything down so much for money's sake
Yeah.
that what is left? Like what is left of the vision of the idea of that perspective?
It's
Like,
so true. And I think maybe a year and a half ago, I was at an Adobe event and I was, talking with a couple colleagues that had started their businesses around the same time that I did. And they've grown like exponentially. And I
mhm,
kind of felt bad about myself. I was like, wow, it's still just me. And then I remembered, I was like, yeah, but I'm choosing it to just be me. Like,
yep,
this is the choice that I've been continuously making. And I think that there's something where people feel bad if they don't think or if they're supposed to scale. Like, and
yeah,
I got caught up in that where I'm like, oh, I feel like if you're not growing, then you're dying kind of mentality. Like, always
100%.
be closing.
Yeah.
I'm like, hey,
Well,
I was like, oh, the man inside of me said that I need to scale.
yeah,
And then I was like, actually, no, I don't want to manage people because I want to do the work myself. I've managed people.
for
I
sure,
think it's really wonderful. But it's not what I want to do, and that's okay.
for
And I
sure.
don't,
I love that.
and
Yeah,
I work with people one-on-one.
yeah, I've heard that a lot. Again, I've heard that from the Hood Sisters. They said that kind of stuff. Mike from Smith and Diction, Mike Smith said the same exact thing on that
Yeah.
podcast. It's just we like there's this idea that you become art director, creative director, and you don't touch the tools anymore. And I'm like, that sounds so horrible.
That terrifies me. I was like, wait, what? My hands have no use anymore? What
Yes,
do I do with myself?
I I don't tell someone else to use their hands
I know.
and they
I was
pay
like,
them
can I
less.
tell you? Yeah, I mean, I was an art director for a while, but even when I was an art director, I got out of it because I kept telling the clients that their branding was like wrong. I'm there, I'm like 22 years old, and I'm like, Coca-Cola, Applebee's, if you just, Miller Coors, if you
Yeah.
actually did this part of your branding, it would extend in such a better way for all the advertisements we're supposed to do. Yeah, and then I realized I'm in the wrong field.
Yeah, and you got out.
Yeah, it took me a minute, but I figured
Yeah.
it out.
So how did you transition from ad to brand? Like how did that work?
For me, I got a degree in graphic design, so I was always in the branding and
Got
communication
you.
mindset.
Okay.
However, I was in Chicago when I graduated school, and that's a very heavy advertising city. So,
It is.
it was in the midst of a decline. What was it? I can't remember what year it was, but it was a bad year for business. And I got a job before I graduated college. So I was like, I'm taking the job. This is great. I don't want to go back to Michigan. I'm staying in Chicago. And I took the job. And this might be too long of a story, but I took that job. It was at an insurance agency. And I was such an outsider. I was like wearing not suits, and I was supposed to be their in-house designer. And yeah, I did not fit in whatsoever. So before I had graduated, I had also sent my physical, like mocked up bound book with like rivets and pages. I sent it out 10 of those. I made 10, and I sent them to 10 agencies that I thought were really cool and interesting and that I wanted to work for. Finally, it appeared on somebody's desk and they called me. So I switched from an insurance agency on the 42nd floor, which I was about to jump out the window of, to an ad agency be called Wonderman. And I became a junior art director. And I remember haggling with HR at the time, being like, no, I'd like to be called junior graphic designer. And she's like, no, you want to be called art director. And I was like, no, I do not. I'm a graphic designer. And she was like, art directors get paid more. She's like, and you get to tell the designers what to do. And I was like, oh, that sounds really good. So I did that. But and that's led me to realize that the designer was never out of me. And I was always trying to create a system that was better for the outcome.
For sure.
So when I decided to move to San Francisco, and when I moved there, I was transitioning quite a bit. So I was like, okay, like, I don't want to be in advertising anymore. I'm going back to my roots. And I fell back into it very naturally, mainly because throughout the entire time that I was working in advertising, I always had side projects. And those side projects were either, like working with Chicago Magazine and doing layout, or working with small little bands across the city and doing their logos and posters and, just fun stuff that I could do for extra money on the side, because my hobby was also my work.
Same.
I was like, sorry, kids. You gotta put in 24 hours a day.
Yeah, every day. Let's do it.
No, it's not like that anymore. But it did help me get here. So,
yep.
And I think, if we're gonna transition from advertising into branding, that's how I had moved into the role at Fuse Project that I was at for 6 years as a director there. The first year I was there, I was not a director, but I was coming off of being a creative director in advertising. So it was, a very similar role, except I was now flexing my branding skills. And I saw a lot of the holes that needed to be filled within that company so that they could build a branding team, and so that we could have kick-ass design, and so that we could get clients that weren't just for industrial and product. We could marry that together and do a product that then is branded, and vice versa. It's like hella collaboration. So I did that for 6 years. And again, the entire time I was working there, I still had my own clients on the side. I worked with Westburger, which is a cute burger chain, or well, maybe it's not a chain yet, but it's a cute burger restaurant in San Francisco. I rebranded the San Francisco Civic Music Association, just always working with some smaller nonprofit or entrepreneurs on the side. So when I quit and went off, I already had a book. I already had case studies of my own that I didn't have to use from my previous work. So, it makes it sound so easy sometimes when people are like, oh, and then you just started a business and it was just taken off and it was so great. And I'm like, yeah, I had my business going in the background my entire career.
Yes. Oh, I love that. Oh, that's so good.
You get tingles?
Yeah, it's so good, because it's like, that's what's left. I get so frustrated because people try to, I don't know if it's social media or what, but people just try to give so much advice, and they give advice from it. They give advice from this very basic perspective, like that's what they actually did. And I'm like, no. You might have written the book on it, but there's things that you left out of this book that you were doing that you might not have even realized you were doing. It's like, my story starts off as I was doing engineering, and then I got laid off in 2020, but I was already doing design from college. And then I started doing it again in 2018. So I was working towards something, and then I went and worked at an agency, but I was still doing this podcast and other work while I was at that agency and networking like crazy, while all that was happening. And it's like, those were the things that put forth me going off and then freelancing when I was ready to go. But people don't talk about those things that we have to do while we're building our dreams or building the other things we want to do.
Yeah, there's no secret. It's just putting in the time and the work and the effort. Unfortunately, there is no secret. I wish there was one. Tell me, I want to know.
I really do.
It's just showing up every day. I mean, the only reason that, really great designers, like Paula Scher, she's a great designer, that that she's still designing, she's still doing it, you know? And like,
Yes.
that is because she's still showing up every day. So
Yep.
the fact that she shows up every day is a commitment to her craft.
Yes.
And I think that anyone, you don't have to be Paula Scher, you don't have to be famous, and you don't have to put yourself out there to be great and to show up to your craft and have a commitment to that.
Yeah, I agree. I'm about to get you with but this is very poetic, but it's like how people talk about love, where it's like when you're in a relationship and love is just showing up every day and saying,
Yeah.
hey, I love you and I'm going to take care of this person. It's the same thing with our craft. It's showing up and saying,
Right.
I'm going to show up and I care for this thing. I will be intimate and get to know it more and learn more about it every day. That's really
I'll
what it
improve
is.
and be better and work on myself and work on these things and
Yeah.
show up for you, you know? Same
Yeah.
with my work, my craft, my clients, all of it, you know? Like, I want to show up. Otherwise, I'm going to go do something else, because if I'm not showing up anymore, then my heart's not in it.
For sure. It's a very, again, it's a very, I don't know. And this is the other thing that I'm very unsure of. I don't really understand why it's like this, but I think it's just the arts in general. It's just so human. Like at the basis, what we do is so human. And that's what I love about it.
It's very vulnerable.
Yeah.
And like there is like the fine line where it's vulnerable to do it, but there's also system. And I think that's the thing that we have to keep in mind as designers, is that it's not personal, even if it's personal. Like you're the person putting your ideas out there, but when somebody doesn't like it, that's subjective. What they don't like isn't you. What they don't like is that they maybe don't really agree with their own strategy. So as long as you're hitting on the strategy, it doesn't matter if they like it or not. You're hitting the strategy for the business, for the brand, for the service.
Exactly. And that's the baby designer. When there was a lot of ego. There was a lot of like being upset that people didn't like ideas. But I you grow up and you realize, oh, that was insecurity. I was worried that they wouldn't like me in the work that I was putting forward. And that's something you do learn. So
I think too, you learn to really sell. At least for me, I always sell the strategy, whether they want it or not. I'm giving them some strategy in some form, because that is my baseline to hinge all of our decisions on. And if the strategy is not right, then we go back to the strategy. Like if the design isn't right, then we go back to the strategy and we start back over again. And we say, hey, something's not right. Maybe we aren't bold. Maybe we aren't, meant to be in this demographic. Maybe we want to be softer, and like, those are the things that we need to define before we can define what we look like, talk like, sound like, speak,
Dang, I love that. That's how I am too. Strategy starts it all. If you don't have that, what do you have to build on it? We're just sitting here. Oh, that looks cool, but cool is subjective. So
cool. A dime a dozen. Everyone can make cool all day long. Just go on Pinterest. Everything's so cool on Pinterest. I'm always like, that's so cool.
I do it too, and I'm like, dang, I wish I could do that. And then you figure it out.
And half of it's not real, and I'm like, oh, what a bummer.
That's the other thing. Yeah, that gets back to like the, I don't know, where we'll see.
You're like, that's another show.
That's another one.
I'm like, you want to start that podcast? I'm ready to start that podcast.
So we've been talking for almost 40 minutes, which is really cool. So I want to hop into another question. So let me.
I like this.
You like this part right here? You answered so many of my questions, which is also
you gave me a list, and I was like, I'm
really awesome. I get you a list, and you're like, this is my next topic.
I'm a high achiever, Cam, okay?
I love it.
I can't help it.
So I do want to ask, like now I'm a freelancer, I own a business. What is one of the hardest parts of being a business owner for you, or over time? What was a big hurdle that you had to jump over to get here? Because we were talking about capitalism and everything, but there's things that you have to do to continue living the life that you want to live. So
yeah, I mean, I think there's so many hurdles, but
yeah,
I think the hurdles for me personally are the mental hurdles. The the you can't control, you can only control so much. And
yeah,
I think also understanding that it does ebb and flow.
it
And
does.
like the anxiety that comes along with an ebb and flow business, which is natural for any consultancy in any field. There's going to be really busy months, and then there's going to be really slow months. And they say in some ways that it's predictive over seasons, but I don't really find that to be true anymore,
Yeah.
mainly because of the startup culture. So it's not like it used to be in the advertising days where they'd get a budget and it would be done by the end of the year, and then come January, they'd be flush again.
Yeah.
Those are like really old school ways of thinking. And, startups happen whenever somebody decides that they want to choose to make a business
Do it.
and got the money to do it. So
For sure.
that could be January 1st, that could be December 25th, like there's no real timeline with that. And I think that is the hurdle as a consultant, understanding that you're going to have to learn to say no so that you can preserve yourself. Because you can't always work through holiday, and you can't just work 24/7 because you burn out. And also, you need that juicy part that's inside of you that creates the magic. You got to have time for yourself to be able to do those juicy things. And, that's the biggest hurdle for me, at least, is making time for myself. That used to be. Now it's like a lot of time just like making for myself.
I love that.
But, it's hard, I think, especially when you're getting started, because you kind of need to say yes to everything. At least, even if I was really good at what I was doing, I still said yes to everything because I wasn't still sure what I wanted to say no to. And, that's another lesson that you learn as a consultant.
For sure.
Saying yes a lot and then saying no.
I feel like you're talking directly to me, so I feel called out. It's wild because something that like you were talking about earlier, working 24/7, my work is my passion kind of thing. That is me. And it's hard to say like, okay, well, I'm not going to work this weekend, but knowing how I put things together, timelines are not perfect. Things just are not set up correctly for me to like cut that time out of being able to work. So that's one thing that I'm like, I got to work on this to make sure that like you're right. You have to replenish that engine and actually have the juice to be able to go out and make that next thing, or you're just like, it's so hard. Like being burnt out is such a, like, using the term juice is so funny because you feel like a sponge that's like empty.
Yeah, it's a towel that's run out.
Yeah.
You feel like you have nothing left to give, and like that can happen both in your, like at home life as well as your business life. And you need to have that balance. And I hate the word balance because that's like my therapeutic word that I have to overcome for my entire life, is like there's a gray area.
Yes.
It's the gray area, and we all need to live in the gray area. Or
for
not.
Sure. Or try. How about we try to live in the gray?
There is one.
Yeah. So I definitely agree. It's something that you kind of have to, like you said, you figure out, you have to say yes to everything at the beginning. That's just how it works. And especially being young, sometimes you don't know what you like and you don't know what you dislike. You don't know who are bad clients. You don't know who are good clients.
Yeah, I mean, I still don't know sometimes. I'm just like, I thought I knew, but now I'm like, maybe I don't. And, nobody knows.
Nobody knows.
I'm still thinking like, maybe I'm going to niche out this year. Like this is like in my strategy. I'm like, I think Lobster Phone's going to niche out this year. I think I'm ready, It's actually 5 years for my business this month. So.
Oh, nice.
And I'm like, I don't really know what to do. It's just me. What do I go do? Have some mezcal and celebrate? Like, me. I did it.
Nice job. Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you weren't a niche, what would you do? Like, how would your niche it? Because that's
I
a
mean, that's
question
the
that,
question, Cameron.
okay, it's a hard question. Everybody's always like
I,
niche, but I'm like, I've seen people niche into specific types of work, and I think
yeah.
that's so like, hey, respect to those people. I feel like it's very lame.
It,
It's
I think it's interesting though. Like I've been
yeah,
reading and looking and researching a lot about it. And it's good and bad on one hand. They're like,
for
oh, you
sure.
should niche and don't be afraid to the proverbial they.
Yeah,
You should niche and don't be afraid to niche just because you think you're going to get bored. And, I think it's what you personally want to do. I don't know.
for
I
sure.
might niche for a year and then just be like, no, I'm going to do it all
And that's
again.
also fair. That's also fair.
Like there's no right answer. And I think the more open and vulnerable we become as a field, as a craft, as designers to each other one-on-one,
For sure.
we realize that, you can change your mind
You
and
can.
nobody's stuck. Like the future isn't set in stone. And with so many things that are moving and shifting and changing, especially right now, especially with AI and all of the progress in the world, like who really knows? I mean, I don't know.
I don't know. We don't know. We don't know.
I want to know very badly.
Tomorrow we can all live on the moon. I have no idea
Yeah.
what's coming next. So
I mean, I could make a plan, but it might not go through. And I think just having direction is good. Like knowing what you like and knowing what you don't like is your strategy. Knowing, the types of things you enjoy. Like I truly enjoy working on consumer packaged goods. And so if I were to get more niche, like it would probably be in CPG, health and wellness, mainly because these are things that I'm interested in personally.
For sure.
Like for me, I've always liked that people can touch what I've done and then throw it away or use it, keep it, but have a physical, tangible relationship with it. That's
for sure.
Exciting to me. Like, it makes me at least feel like people understand what I do and it's not so difficult to explain, so I can walk away. Be like, I'm a designer for packaging. See you later.
Yeah, that's easy. That's easy one. That's a good point. Yeah. You designed a bottle one time and you ran the label around the bottle in like a spiral.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my God. Like, again, I was like, this also like some ethereal thing. I was like,
whew, even I'm getting a little bit sweaty about it right now.
It was so beautiful. It was such a beautiful idea.
It's still out there and they're so successful from that rebrand. Like Rivella is the #2 soda in Switzerland.
What?
I mean, it was before too, but it was in during a declining market because soda tanked like about 6 or 7 years ago. Soda in general tanked. And during that time we rebranded them and they like soared off. Like I think it was 10 or 18% increase in the revenue within the year that Coca-Cola was like tanking, which is huge.
Wow.
Yeah. They needed a rebrand really bad.
Yeah. And I mean, something that was beautiful and forward thinking. I love that one. I loved watching you kind of like show some of those pieces off.
That was a fun brand to do.
Yeah, that was really cool. So we are towards the end of the show. To end the show, I always ask everyone the same question. And you can take it however you want. The question is, what does creativity mean to you?
Ooh, I guess I should have researched this one, huh? Kidding. Creativity means to me personal expression. Like it's who I am. It's in everything that you do. It's in the way that you show up, the way that you fold your clothes, the way that you eat your dinner and cook and arrange your meal. It's in everything. So that's what it means to me. It means everything.
That's so awesome. Yeah, I feel that same way. It's like within all of us, but it's like only a few of us realize what's happening. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
it seems like some people like think that the creativity is only reserved for the people like drawing or making stuff. And it's
I
like,
feel like everybody's
no.
creative. I mean, there's some people that definitely are not creative. I've met them. But I feel like there's like this bit of creativity in all of us. And it's just, if you can, you know, see it in somebody or pull it out of them even, or acknowledge it, you know, it's the quirkiness. It's people's idiosyncrasies. That's creativity.
Yeah. It's still weird. Everyone should be a lot more weird.
Yeah.
Weird in the quirky way. Like everyone should be more quirky.
Yeah.
Because that's what I love. And that's one thing that like lately I've been trying to like show when I go to show concepts for like brand. Let's do some weird stuff. Like
Just something weird.
yeah. Everyone should take some time today and try to do something weird and quirky and different. I have people wearing their overalls backwards like the 90s.
Yeah, totally. There's a lot of that out here. There's a lot of really interesting fashion, and I'm like, ooh, I'm here for it.
Dope. Yeah. I again really enjoyed having you on and getting to talk with you. Is there anything that you want to plug that you're working on that you'd like other people to kind of tune into?
Ooh, I guess just, you know, drop me a line and say hi.
Yes.
Yeah.
I love it. Where can they find you on the internet?
Yeah, you can find me. Either at Arth Chris, last name, first name,
Okay.
or lobsterphone.com. Yeah.
Love it. Love it. Okay.
It was so lovely to meet you here, and this was a lot.
Here on the internet. You're in Mexico City. I'm in Phoenix, Arizona. It's really cool.
So lovely. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of Creative Questions. Like, comment, or subscribe to allow us to keep making more episodes. I appreciate you for being here, and I'll see you on the next one.